Are we live?
Yep.
Oh, we're live. All right, everybody, we're live here at the Attention Era Media Studios overlooking beautiful downtown Milwaukee. You're watching hour 3 of 24 hours of live Google Hangouts, covering a wide range of community manager topics from all around the world. We're celebrating 5 years of Community Manager Appreciation Day today. This is our 3rd year, actually, doing this broadcast that we've all worked together to organize all over the world. So we'd like to give a special shout out to our award sponsors. That is BTC Revolutions, Flockler, Higher Logic, My Community Manager, Online Community Results, socialmedia.org, and Sprout Social. So yeah, we're the gang from My Community Manager. My name is Brew, co-producer here at CMGR Hangout. And Sherry.
Hey everyone, I'm Sherry Rohde. I lead Community and User Experience at Rebellion Media and co-produce CMGR Hangout here with Brew.
What is up, world? I am Dom, freelance extraordinaire, and hanging out just on these guys' coattails and chilling here in Milwaukee.
Awesome. So we'll just hand everything over to you, Brian, and we'll sit back and enjoy your panel. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Rock on, guys. It's nice seeing you, after hours, since it's usually our Friday CMGR hangout, rocking that. So keep up the good work. Hour 1 and hour 2 rocked on. So like you said, Brian Fanzo, iSocial Fans on the Twitters, kind of put this together. I had the lovely 3 a.m. or 2 a.m. spot here on the East Coast, but I have no room to complain because there's only one East Coaster on the panel. And he's the one that'll be fixing his hair and have the podcast microphone. So I'll pass it down the line. We'll start down with Jacob. Go ahead and introduce yourself, give your Twitter handle, and we'll jump into these questions.
Excellent. My name's Jacob Curtis, currently wearing pajama pants, and coming here from Portland, Oregon, so holding down the West Coast side of things. Blogger and tutorial creator at jacobcurtis.com, and yeah, really excited to be here. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right, Nika Cicero, you can go and unmute yourself.
Hey, I'm Nick Cicero, and I'm the content marketing manager at Percolate, and I also am the founder and CEO of an influencer marketing agency called Del Mundo. So it's great to be here. It's late, but it hasn't really started snowing yet, so I think I'm okay.
All right, Rachel Miller.
Hey, everyone. Rachel Miller, chief listener at Pipeliner CRM. Rachel Lou Miller on Twitter. Super excited to be a part of hour 3 of this 24-hour palooza. I'm in Santa Monica, California. Not as sunny as it normally is when I'm on CMGR, but very excited to talk with you all.
All right, and last but not least, Stephanie. Hello.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I am the community manager at Dynamic Signal for the entire company, running on our VoiceStorm platform that is an actual tool to empower employee advocacy for corporations. So happy to bring that side to the conversation.
Awesome. So I think we'll hopefully be having Tim Hughes will be jumping in as well, rounding out the panel from the UK. I did message him. So, but awesome to have everybody here. I kind of pulled the panel together of a very wide range of people with different backgrounds and different skill sets. And one of those main reasons was really kind of talking community and social business. And I think social business is this term that's thrown around oftentimes without it really having much meaning. And I think it really covers a gamut of things from social selling to community management to training to the new tools and technology that lists, social listening, all of these things that really cover more than just one role within a social business. And I worked internally. My job for a long time was community internal to a company, really focusing only on employees. And then I had to kind of learn to bridge that externally. So I co-host Social Business Hour with Rachel Miller, the other panelist here, on Mondays at 4. So that'll be the only hour I will not be watching CMAD this week or this day, hopefully. But I want to kind of jump into kind of a question. Just not everyone is fully in a role that's directly social business, but we all have businesses that are social. I know Jacob works a lot on training and implementing things on that side. Nick is running kind of a new founded influencer technology with focusing some Snapchat influencers and things that I really think are cool ways to really get employees and businesses involved. Rachel, of course, community manager, social listening, and then Stephanie with employee advocacy, Dynamic Signal pretty much running the show when it comes to employee advocacy. I work a lot with the IBM team who also utilizes Dynamic Signal on a regular basis. So I think we have a wide range. So I'm curious, we'll kind of start down with you, Jacob. What role does community play in companies becoming a social business?
Well, I think really when you think of communities, you got to think of the internal communities that we'll really be talking about today, and then also the external communities, which are kind of the customers of the business. So you have the employees, and really fostering that community can make the business a lot more efficient, as well as make, well, the employees more happy. Then you have the external customers, where facilitating and managing that community can lead to increased sales, brand affinity, and those type of things.
All right, Nick, what are your thoughts? Especially because Nick also a couple podcast hosts, and I know he kind of gets to interview and schmooze with a lot of the influencers and those in social business. So I'm curious, Nick, what role does community play in social business moving forward?
I mean, I think that it's two sides of community. I think you look at like an internal community, so how do your employees feel empowered to become better at what they do and wanting to carry the brand message? And then I think obviously there's the external community, so how do you build a group of people who are willing to go to bat for you, to have connections with you, and to help you, do a lot of different things to build a network around the services or goods that you're providing. So I see it as kind of like two sides of the equation that you have to actually manage to come together to kind of build a strong brand.
No, I love that. And late in making an entrance that is well due. I don't know if Allie, you have your ears in.
Hey,
right.
Sorry.
No, you're good, Allie. You're good. So yeah, introduce yourself real quick. I think you have to pull your camera down just a second. Just a smidge, and then introduce everybody. Actually, I'm sure a majority of people watching are a fan of yours and know you already, but you can introduce as well.
Okay, sorry everyone. I'm having some serious technical issues here. Actually, the internet in my apartment is down, so I've been trying to figure out what to do. But anyway, I'm Allie Greer. I'm the Director of Community and Content at Scoop.it, and it is 11 p.m. in San Francisco right now. And I hope that everyone can see and hear me okay.
Yeah, loud and clear. I'm glad you joined in. We're walking down the line on what role does community play. So I'm going to come back to you last so you get a chance to get a feel on there. So Rachel, for you, what role does community play in business becoming a social business?
I mean, it might sound overly simple, but you really can't be a social business without acknowledging your community, be it internal or external. They play a huge role in how your company is perceived. Culture is the foundation of social business. So I'm really excited to dive deeper on this topic with employee advocacy and everything that entails.
Sweet, that's a perfect segue. Stephanie?
I think what we may have started to turn the conversation to, which is a really important point, is that for the company to truly be social, you have to have an appropriate social media policy. There's a lot of companies that, first of all, are very scared about letting community be active on social, not having the control to safely deliver the message, and not really trusting the people in their community, be them that employees or an external community of influencers, knowing that they have the correct message in front of them, they know how to deliver it in social. I think a lot of leadership is a little bit scared of that, and I think you'll find that most social businesses that have a truly active and truly powerful community have loosened up some of those social media policy rules, and really that's the way that they've seen their community grow and really flourish.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with that for sure. All right, Allie, I'm kicking it over to you on community's role. I know Scoop.it, you rock an awesome community that I'm happy to be a part of. So give us your take on community's role in social business.
Okay, jumping right into it. So yeah, for us, at Scoop.it, we definitely try to run an extremely social business, as some of you may be aware of, particularly Brian and a bunch of other you guys I know we've interacted with on social on behalf of Scoop.it. So I think that a lot of this idea behind social business, a lot of the people who want to kind of get into that space, something that I would want to say to those people is that relationships are the most important thing, and that's why community is such a big part of it. And whether there are different levels of community, as far as I have a unique perspective coming from a B2B community, but there's clients, then there's people who actually want to be a part of your community, there's the ambassador level, there's the level of evangelism where the person might not necessarily actually be a client of yours, but they're still, a part of the community and they help you spread the word. So I think that there are a lot of aspects of community that can be applied to social business that are super important. And I think that the biggest one is probably the building the relationships on like different levels. So I don't know if that even makes sense, but
no, it does. I think that kind of that's a good summarization of really what we were all talking about, because a lot of it really had to do with the idea like you can't be a social business externally if you can't activate your internal community. And oftentimes we think of community, and I think even community manager, the term when you're hiring one, someone immediately thinks they're only dealing with an external customers. But I like to think that there's two types of customers you're dealing with: your internal ones and your external ones. Your internal ones being employees. And I think it's those relationships, it's activating influencers, it's connecting all of those dots. And I know a lot of us work with content, work with influencers. So I'm curious for this next question, some of the unique challenges when managing an internal employee community. So what are some of those challenges that when you're, beyond, I think, just even the initial onboarding, really activating an internal community within a business? And Jacob, go ahead and start with you.
Sure. I think just right now it's really unorthodox and really breaks tradition for employees to come into other companies that are socially active and actually foster that and like socially active employees. I mean, I bet you'd be so confused if your employer who was interviewing you asked you if you had a personal brand, or, well, they should know that already after Googling you, but, asking you if what kind of your Pinterest following is, or how big your Twitter following is, or if you're interested in anything. So I think it starts there, and also some of the challenges just internally are really breaking down the silos of, hey, this is not traditional, so should I be talking to sales about wanting to know their problems, or should I be talking to this person, or what's the chain of command here? And so as communication becomes more open, because there's so many more outlets for it, I think just navigating effective and meaningful communication that's going to get things done instead of just a lot of different chatter amongst different departments, I think just kind of unifying that and developing those new processes is a big challenge in itself.
Yeah, I think unfortunately a lot of times we end up getting pieces where like someone says, I need content created, or I need someone to do these things, and they don't think about activating their internal community to do so. They think of, the employees are their greatest assets, yet when they think about community, or they think about creating content for their community, they go try to, have to hire an outside agency instead of tapping into some of those internal resources. So, especially in the influencer game, Nick, when we're talking influencers as well as influencers' roles with those internal employees, what are some of those not only limitations we might have, but some of the complications that will kind of occur for businesses today?
I mean, I think it really depends on how you're looking at working with an influencer internally. I think that there's definitely setting policies if you have people who may or may not have like a large personal brand outside of your company. I think that that's something that anybody who works in a company or in a corporation who likes to do things outside of their work could probably tell you there's always that clash. I think that if you're working like with influencers as part of, let's say, like a content campaign to do more things, I mean, there's always ways that companies want to motivate employees to do different things. I mean, right now I work at Percolate, and Percolate, we developed an internal tool that's like Barista. So instead of everybody kind of running around and asking questions, it's like in this Reddit type format where everybody posts questions in there, and everybody votes up all the right answers, and so kind of the best answer serves to the top. So you're able to kind of see the conversations that are happening at one point in time, instead of actually trying to run around and trying to get a million answers by sending a million emails to people. So I think that when you think about like the term influencer, it's like how are you using it once again. But if you're talking about from an internal point, that standards that I think that you guys mentioned before is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I think something important you said there is you're making it easier on your employees to be active, right? I think that's
right.
a key role. And Rachel, from your perspective, I know not only empowering social sales and social selling, but also really educating a community externally as well as your leadership is always important when it comes to social. How do you think of some of those unique, I guess, challenges that we face?
I think a lot of it comes down to companies, especially large ones. They have employees that cover many different, generational periods. So you have people who have experienced different work cultures. Like the older generation, they're used to departments being a lot more siloed. So having them embrace that roles are more fluid now doesn't necessarily come naturally. So I think for me that's been a struggle, trying to align departments, and then getting them to be social too. That's still they're not as comfortable as social people. They're great in person, but getting them on Twitter or LinkedIn is not a natural act for them. So that's been empowering them in ways that they're comfortable, but are also making strides towards becoming a social business isn't easy.
Sweet. And Stephanie, internal community and really that whole world is, what Dynamic Signal works on. I know that's kind of what you're activating. What are some of the things that you see challenges when people are coming to you from a company perspective?
Yeah, I've seen countless launches for our clients over the past couple of months, and I have to say that our account management team has really been able to develop what the secret sauce in creating a really successful launch, which is not exactly dependent on the tool itself. It 100% resides in the buy-in and overcoming the fear of the employees being social. So a lot of the employees we find through our clients a lot of times they're scared. They're afraid to take the message to social because they're afraid of the reprimand, saying something wrong, damaging something for PR. And so there's really a great strategy in launching through your advocates that are already on social, already feel comfortable. And what's really surprising also is once the program's up and running and you have all these other employees overcoming that fear and seeing what happens online and how successful it can be, people that you didn't think were social savvy or weren't really as active on social completely come out of their shell, and your community just starts growing like the hockey stick. So I think buy-in and fear are an initial step that really, once overcome, you find that your success just doubles, triples, quadruples in a short amount of time.
All right, Allie, I know with you, not only with content's role in activating, employees, but also even content curation, the concept of even educating them on what that actually is something I think is an uphill battle with employees. What are your thoughts on that, Allie?
Yeah, so something that's kind of unique about my experience with employee advocacy is that I work with a really, really small team. So even if I get buy-in, it's still really difficult to kind of create this large ripple effect that you kind of were just talking about. So I think for us, it's super, not to be totally promotional, but content curation actually has been the easiest way to involve the rest of our non-content team in marketing efforts. It's basically, I guess the principle behind it is finding something that's super easy for them to be able to do. If they're not a marketer or they're not a social person, I think in our case and a lot of our clients' cases, curation is the answer to that, because it's not, it's not writing, it's not creating a whole new piece of content. It's kind of just curate a couple pieces, and the more you know, then the more we know. So there's that side of it, but there's also if I curate a newsletter internally to our team, that's another way to kind of help me activate them as ambassadors. So there's two sides to it. There's the side in which they can partake in it, and then there's the side in which you can kind of nudge them. But I think the overall message is that as the kind of resident expert on marketing or social or content or whatever you may be, your responsibility is to make it as easy as possible for those who are not, I guess, skilled or passionate about that area.
Yeah, I think that's a kind of a good theme. I think we were all kind of talking there on the idea. A lot of it's trust, a lot of it's training, and a lot of it's activating and making it easy on employees. Because if you give them an entire whiteboard, they're going to be overwhelmed, and there's too many, there's not enough parameters or not enough things that they think they can get involved in. You draw a box in that whiteboard. I think that's when they all of a sudden are like, oh, this is where I can add my input. This is I can curate content. I can, share things, not only internally but externally. I think not every employee has to be a social employee externally. I think that's a mistake a lot of businesses make. But there's plenty of employees. Every employee has input internally that can activate those social employees. That can turn your social sellers into rock stars because your product software guy just shared some awesome insights. So I think that's kind of a cool way. And Nick, I want to get to you first in this next one, because I think some of the big struggle for social businesses right now is connecting community internally with the influencers externally. And I've had a real recent experience with IBM doing an amazing job of that. I no longer think of IBM as Big Blue. I think of them as the 50 or 60 employees that I've had the pleasure of shaking a hand with at multiple events, because they've connected me with their employees as an influencer that was brought in there. And I think that was a strong bond, not only to kind of rebrand, but I engage and relate with an IBM company that has 400,000 employees. So I think that's an interesting one. So what role do you think kind of connecting those two play when we're talking about social business?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's really awesome when you're able to get and set up a relationship with an influencer and activate multiple employees, not just kind of a few of them inside of there. So oftentimes you see influencer campaigns that are run, and the only people who actually have any interaction with that influencer is like the few people in the marketing team or the influencer marketing strategist at the agency who sets up a campaign, and they don't really have a connection after the fact. And so I think that's really the difference, because if you are compensating an influencer, you should really want to get the most out of them. You should not just want to use them to produce some content or to spread your message. You should use them as an internal tool just as much as an external tool. So whether that's figuring out how to build more materials or communication to a sales team, if you guys, let's say, are doing a campaign with a big Vine star that maybe some of your team doesn't know about, and you're doing something that's fun and unique. Like if you're like a GE, for example, how does GE translate that to all the different people who sell the crazy things that they advertise in those commercials? They have to figure out how to compartmentalize and communicate those pieces of content that they're doing to talk to all different types of audiences.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Jacob, when it comes to influencers and really even connecting them, not only training but also educating them overall on really what the power is. How do you kind of see that coming through?
Well, I think really the influencer's role and really comes to that whole human-to-human connection where they are the face to the brand. For your example, you actually had conversations probably digitally first with some of the employees who may have either reached out to you on their own or because their employer told them to, but you know them for the employees and who they work for and what they're passionate about doing. So I think the influencers and even the employee advocates are kind of the initial handshake, and they can be there to kind of support the relationships that are formed, but then it's again one of those challenges for the brand to be involved in the conversation as well too, so that influencer or employee advocate can continue making more relationships while the brand is also be able to kind of meet the person as well to develop an old sign relationship. So when say the influencer moves on, that brand still has some form of connection with that person that was introduced through that advocate.
So I'm curious, Rachel, from your standpoint, we're talking about influencers and internal, but I think that even the word, employee advocacy and the term influencers, I think is something that we're still kind of molding and shaping depending on the organization and team. How do you see those kind of playing together, not only in your space, but some of the things that you're working on?
Well, I guess you can have internal influencers for sure, but I think right now we usually, the connotation is an external influencer that you either identify because they're a natural brand advocate or you kind of select them and mold them into one. And I think employees are advocates by default. And if you're hiring for culture instead of necessary skill set, again, they will naturally fall into an advocate role, and both very influential for building your social business community.
No, I love that. I think hiring is a huge element there because, but also hiring and firing for culture fit, I think, is the way we kind of move forward on that. Stephanie, from some of the stuff that you're working on, especially from the employee advocacy, I think some companies might think they understand influencers, but not employer advocacy as much. And then when they activate employee advocacy, I think they often miss the connection with the influencers. How do you kind of see those playing?
Yeah, I think there's another role yet again in education here, right? So influencers open yet another group of people to engage with that you might not, the social Twitter sphere is huge, right? And we have not only Twitter, but we have Google Plus, like we're on here now, and we have Facebook, and there's so many areas of engagement. There's so many people that you look at these influencers, and they really have a fine-tuned group based on what their message is. And we have some influencers that purely target social selling because that is where the direction is going in their mind. So when you really connect your employees to influencers, you really want to make sure that they know what the influencer is about, because it's going to impact the message that they're delivering with them through the community that the influencer engages with. And so it's really the connection of, if the engagement is going to happen, you can't really just throw the two out there in a group and expect them to really engage if they don't really know what the common topics are between both of them. It's 100% relationship driven, right? So we're all people. We're not just a handle, right? And so there's a lot of self-education and kind of filling in that gap for your employees when you're connecting both kind of circles together.
No, and I think that's important. I think not only filling those gaps, the education element, but also the element of like giving them an idea that like an influencer can connect with them, and really making it having a reason to connect. Kind of to Nick's point, like you should be leveraging and utilizing these influencers not only for what they're able to do for your brand externally, but if they're able to turn a couple employees into even more social employees, or maybe even just build trust between the influencer and the community, the external community and internal. Ali, I'm curious from your standpoint. I know Scoop It has some interesting, not only content curation, collaboration elements that really activate an employee that allows them to connect with influencers. But how do you see influencer connecting with not only employees at these companies, but also social employees that are sharing content? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I forgot I muted myself.
No worries.
I'm actually using my iPad right now because, like I said, I have no internet, so I'm on data and the iPad. I don't know.
I love
anyway.
Running on data, watch out. So I got like 5 minutes before they start charging like $50 a month. Can't go over my plan.
I know. Wait, we're not getting paid for this?
I know. I'm late because of data.
I blame data. That's all. Yeah, so what was the question again? I'm sorry.
No,
we're talking about people connecting with influencers.
Influencers and employees, really, how connecting those, and really some of the things that we're running into between those two areas.
Yeah, so I think Jacob actually had a really, really good point earlier in saying that once you actually are connected with the influencers and they're kind of connecting with your community, it's important to get like all of the employees connected with them as well, because like he said, that's not going to last forever. And I think that that's something that a lot of people really, really, really can forget. I think that if you are working with on some influencer campaigns and you are compensating those people, it is so important to make sure you can connect every single person that you possibly can within your company with that person. I know, like, I've tried to do that. I'm sure Brian, like, as we've known each other, like, you've gotten to know a lot more people within Scoop It, and I'm trying to do that for a lot of other advocates and influencers that we work with as well. And I think that the kind of content aspect of it is a really important way to bring the influencers together with the internal advocates or the employee advocates, because it's kind of something that those two categories of people can connect over, whether or not they actually have more in common. Like, you and I might have a lot more in common than you have with my like someone on our dev team or our sales team, but I think that through content and kind of whatever I guess whatever the internal employees can add to what the marketing team is already doing with the influencer campaign is valuable. And I think that the content is something that they can both relate to, and that's really important.
No, I couldn't agree more. And, full disclosure, I had Ali's Scoop It video team in my office this week shooting a little video promo that will go out soon. So that was a cool way of bridging the kind of the gap there and things that we have going on. So I'm curious now, when we're kind of talking, not only influencers, but we're kind of talking social business as a whole, and we're kind of breaking down all the different elements here. When we talk about, where should brands start? We talked about trust. We talked about hiring and firing and all of that elements. But if they're already an established brand and they're trying to build an external community or an internal one and really connect the two? Where should they start? I'll kind of kick it over to Rachel first to kind of jump on this one.
Well, for me, I like to lead with education first. So, I mean, obviously, social listening plays a big part. You need to identify your prospects. Who are they? Who are they talking to? What networks best? And then don't just start shouting at them. You know, engage naturally in the conversations, become a trusted advisor, and then I truly believe you lead with education first. You become a trusted advisor, and then they'll naturally look to you when they have questions, or they'll refer customers to you, and you just naturally build your community the right way. You're not forcing anybody to like your brand, and I wouldn't even recommend mentioning your brand. It's just they come to know you for you, and that's what role your advocates will play, and you'll naturally attract influencers just because you're out there, you're talking, you know your stuff.
No, I think that's important. I think, and also it's really the idea of really what, we talked about education, but training, not only training the new hires, because then you have your own little army that you don't have to untrain them. I think that's often one of the things we forget about the most is you have to teach people to stop doing it the broken way and start doing it the right way. So Jacob, what are your thoughts there kind of on where should brands start kind of in that building internal and external community side?
Yeah, I think you should definitely just start at who's already socially active. So whether that's current employees or businesses have those customers that send them the pictures of after they install the product, and they're like, gee golly, like, yeah. Or as Rachel had mentioned with the social listening, if they post that on their Facebook or on their Twitter, and the community manager of the business is able to pick that up. But it really starts at just finding who are those socially engaged people already, and then starting with them. I just wrote an article on Millennial CEO about finding connections based upon relationships and affinity, and how you start small kind of with maybe micro influencers, and as you start getting introduced and build value, and as Rachel had mentioned, the education, I consider that value. You build value with those influencers, you kind of connect with them there, and once you start with the kind of a community that already knows each other and you're more just playing the introducer, you'll have much better results in the long run, because your community will be that much more targeted and actually be more prone and active in conversation than somebody who maybe is just following. For example, Brian, like, there's a lot of people who follow you, right, in your community, but a lot of those people actually talk as well too. So they engage in your conversations with you because they're socially active naturally. And I think that's where companies need to start, is finding the employees and then also finding the external influencers. So for example, the company I just started working at, I kind of went around and I started introducing myself as the new marketing director, yada, yada, yada. And I met with the guy in the back who does the steering wheels. It's a company that creates like aftermarket hot rod steering wheels. And he's in the back shop, and he's this kind of young guy, and he's just building all these wheels. And I walk up to him and I'm like, hey, I'm Jacob. I'm going to be taking over the social media stuff. He says, oh, so you're going to be taking over this? And he holds up his smartphone, and he already has a whole bunch of pictures that he's already been taking the entire time without the boss even knowing about it. So he was back there after every time he created a wheel, he was creating this content with any attaboys or anything like that. He was just naturally doing it. So I didn't take that job from him. Now I have his what he likes to do already incorporated into my overall strategy that I'm now developing for the company.
No, I think that's a great one. I think oftentimes it's the quick wins that we forget, because we want the buy-in on our long-term strategy, but we forget to kind of assign the quick wins. And I know, Nick, you and I kind of first talked about that. I know at your last company that was something that something you were really big focused on.
I would say that my opinions have not changed. I'm still very big on that, and so my recommendation for brands would be to start by setting goals that you can chew. Don't bite off more than you can chew. So, like you guys all said, obviously, the pie in the sky, it's awesome if everybody is getting involved with being social and sharing and all those things, but where do you really start? I mean, that's the tough part. Like, how do you actually walk away? So maybe you want your new hires that you bring into the company to be more social, and that's an area that you can contain. Or maybe you want to just increase the number of social shares for content that you're putting out there, and that's something that you can measure. Or maybe you want to increase your email newsletters for your internal newsletters that you're creating communication. So I think that that's one of the important things, is figure out not just where you can get the easy wins, but where can you measure and where can you figure out, here's something that I can contain and I can test this new experience out, because you're never going to change everything overnight. That's the most important thing. Even the world's largest global organizations have to start, even Brian, you're talking about IBM earlier. Think about that. You and I participated in 2 completely separate influencer events in the same week in the same town, like 2 buildings over from each other. So completely different sections with different missions and positioning. So being able to work in that cohesive environment, I mean, you're never going to know unless you be able to figure out, what is the goal for our purpose of this influencer or advocacy program inside of our company.
No, you're right. I mean, not only is it like finding quick wins, but it's finding quick wins that matter to the person that's your direct superior. And I think even part of the problem is some of the companies don't even really know they have a problem. And I think Stephanie, you kind of luck out with a little bit of that, is because people that by they're already contacting you, or maybe you're reaching out to them, they at least have reached step 1 of they realize they're not activating or utilizing their best asset. And I think that's one of the first hurdles. But when someone's contacting you and you're kind of talking about those quick wins, where does kind of Dynamic Signal and what you guys are doing, kind of jump in as the initial quick win to kind of get the buy-in to go on for the long program?
Yeah, it's actually quite funny, the timing of that question. Just this past week or the week before, we just captured a new or we launched with a new client. Can't really name them yet, but they came from a competitor of ours, and when we kind of looked into what went wrong there, really it was a sign today, launch tomorrow scenario, and it just didn't work. We developed an entire blog about it, and we called it Safety First, Speed Next. So going back to having that social media policy, having some kind of rules for the road, right? So you're not just kind of hitting the gas without holding a steering wheel. You're kind of actually guiding in a way and encouraging your employees in a way that's going to be beneficial, right? So I think that is definitely the first step. And then obviously, we're seeing that those social savvy employees and advocates are clearly the go-to to launch your program. But I think also piggybacking on this quick wins that we've been talking about, the easier you make it to participate, those are the clients that we see just completely skyrocket with this concept. IBM is clearly the leader in seeing this on all social channels because you can't get away from them. They're doing it, and they're doing it in a raw form where people you kind of see the conversation coming from these people. It's not just an auto share, or an auto reply, or some of those auto you don't really exactly gotcha. You don't things that make you like not necessarily I'm watching those awful Jacob dance over there.
Yeah. I know, I was throwing in the responders. I was like, I see, I got you, there it is, there's your word, take it.
We're gonna have to drop stop auto DMs as the hashtag again. No, and I think I think Stephanie, part of that is like that element of not only you have to find the active people, but I think one of the mistakes people make is they say we're looking only at millennials as social employees, and I fight that battle of like it's millennial mindset. If you're only looking at people that are under 33, you're probably missing a whole bunch of other people that are also socially, digitally conscious, willing to get in there. But back to the kind of the other point was the safety first. If you give them no constraints, you don't give them any guidance on it, they're too scared to hit that tweet button. Although it is 140 characters and probably not many people see it to begin with.
And there's so many other ways to grow this organically. People really, people come to us and they ask for a demo, and we take them through the whole product, and they kind of sit there and go, wow, this is a big deal. Like this looks like a huge undertaking. But really, like you said earlier, leverage your employees. They can submit content through the platform. They can create content on their own. We encourage companies to look at their employees as thought leaders. They're not just, hey, Joe, we want you to be on Twitter, and here's a bunch of content, we want you to share it. It's so much more than that. And when you start with the engagement, you get out of it what you put into it, right? And so I think that might be something that a lot of initial, I don't even want to say that they're community managers, because a lot of companies don't have the community managers. They're not there yet. The fact that they're thinking about it is a huge, wonderful first step. And so it's a little trickle-down effect where everything kind of starts to come into place, but they don't quite understand that it doesn't have to be a huge endeavor. You can really leverage everyone on your team, and in different ways. Engineering can totally submit content that they feel is relevant. And what we'll find that's really interesting, actually inside our own, not just our clients, but the way that we use our platform, is I have so many members of my team that are submitting content that I didn't even know was out there. And it's not marketing, it's not product. It's like the guys that are really behind. It's not our sales team. It's like some of those people that you don't necessarily interact with, and they're submitting content on our platform, and I'm seeing it all about employee advocacy, and it's just awesome, great topics that are coming out through the platform because we made it easy for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's huge points, and I think also one of the big mistakes they make is they, instead of training them up front, they tell them to sign up for accounts, and then they say we'll automate it with our social media manager. That's not employee advocacy. If your social media manager is running 40 employees' accounts, that does not count as a social. And why would the employee 6 months down the road want to get trained on something that you just decided to leverage his mouthpiece anyhow for the 42 followers, or if you bought followers? And I think I want to skip ahead to the next question to kind of jump into this idea of I kind of picked a lot of the people from this panel because everyone kind of comes from a different walk in social business, so we all have different roles in there. And I think part of the thing with a community manager is they have to be the face of the brand that understands all of these roles. That includes how do you empower social selling, how do you use content, how do you empower training, and as well as training your leadership and community, how do you meet with your influencers. So for this question, I'm curious, when we're talking about leadership buy-in, in your domain of specialty where you're at, what are some things that a manager or a community manager or someone that's working in that area do to get leadership buy-in? And Allie, I'll kind of start with you. So in that content game, how can they do it? I'm a huge fan of teaching CEOs to curate content, but where does that kind of fit in getting that leadership buy-in?
This is a really interesting question for me. I was actually just thinking about this the other day, but I actually happen to do content marketing for a company that helps other companies do content marketing. So for me, although it's super meta, I've never really had this issue of leadership buy-in, which is like super lucky for me.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I'm super lucky to work for people who value community and content and all that, but there are other leaders within, it's possible that there could be other leaders within a company that aren't directly above you, but are directly above other people who it might be more difficult to convince. And I feel like for me, I've had a harder time kind of, proving the value not to my superiors, but to other people's superiors within the companies who I'm not really in a place to tell them what to do, but at the same time, they're not telling me what to do either, so it's kind of like a weird relationship. So I think something that's really important to consider that I even overlooked was that, you're also going like across departments. So I'm so lucky because I never have to convince my boss that community is valuable, but I do have to convince the rest of my company, which is like way more difficult than I thought. So for me, the biggest issue with buy-in is from other people in places of leadership who are very focused on their own ways of generating ROI for the company in their positions. And I think that for me, and maybe this is something that could be helpful to others, I've kind of used the support that I do have to get the support from others within the company. So
actually,
leverage.
Allie, you get like the bonus point because I said I perfectly said sorry because I specifically said how do you get leadership buy-in? Because I didn't say management buy-in, because too often people think when you're trying to get buy-in, it's just your direct manager, and I think of not all managers are leaders, and so therefore you don't have to get every manager's buy-in, but you want to get leaders buy-in. So I love that you attacked it that way, because you're right. Your CEO, Guillaume, we've had him on our show as Biz Hour, a huge fan. I actually asked him this exact same question when he was on our show. So I'm curious, Jacob, we'll jump over to you. When we're talking the same thing, when we're talking leadership buy-in, where are those quick wins? Where are those things that we can get those leaders to buy in on what we're trying to implement as a community?
Sure. So I think thankfully there's a lot more research coming out about and case studies about effective employee advocacy strategies that have helped increase a brand's reach, et cetera, and all these other great things that they do. So I think having that written by legitimate article creators, having kind of that ammunition to show your boss is going to be pretty powerful. But also, for example, as a community manager's role, because I was an employee advocate for the previous agency I worked at, and I was the community manager for the brand. So naturally, because I wanted to put a face to the brand, I was along with the brand, communicating online, joining Twitter chats, etc., and always kind of being there vocally. But because of that, I found that because I was writing content for the blog for the company, and people started to recognize me as a writer and author as Jacob Curtis, I was starting to see that they were sharing my company's, my agency's content. And so I was able to then go to the employees afterward, after I put a meeting of saying, hey, look at all these people who are now sharing our agency's articles. Now this is just me creating content once a week, but aren't you trying to build out your digital marketing portfolio too? Aren't you trying to get your stuff shared? Because so many times you have employees writing for blogs, or for their company blog, and they get like 2 tweets out of it. And they're like, yo, man, I was trying to impress my boss and my manager. I stayed up all night writing this, and that's what I get out of it. And so I was able to say, look, as a community manager who is building up these relationships, why don't I introduce you guys and your writing to all my friends that are already checking out our stuff anyway? So I was able to kind of show them results and get their buy-in there and be like, oh, well, yeah, I want to not only improve myself at this company currently, but what can this also do for me after I'm out of this company? Trying to make them think ahead a little bit.
No, I love that. I think that's a valid point. I think I will pull in a tweet just because I'm used to doing this with my side. Because Andrew Hutchinson, big fan of him from Australia,
Yes.
said show them the data, highlight the opportunities. Many great social CEOs, to get a social CEO or a CEO to be social. The data. I think the data is the foundation. I think the data is the answer for social business across the whole. And probably one of my favorite bloggers on data is actually on this panel. So Nick, I'm going to give it over to you just to talk. Nick makes data sound easy when he writes about it, and it's actually a valuable lesson. So we're talking data for executive buy-in, Nick. Where does that kind of fall in to get leaders to buy into what we're trying to sell them when it comes to social business and community?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it really comes back to a combination of understanding how you're measuring it in terms of like a tangible benefit. So like if I'm doing content marketing, maybe it's how many leads am I bringing to the table, and then what are the actions that have driven to those leads. So, things that we talked about before. Do you use influencers? Do you not? Sometimes it's about picking the right type of content to be able to create the right amount of numbers to show success that's happening. So like I said, if I'm looking for a webinar download, or I want people to come check out something that I'm using an influencer to view or to listen to a podcast and hear my voice, I think that that's the element. And then there's also passive data that people don't realize. So if you set up triggers like having a whole sales force filling out sales reports that ask common questions, you can actually like mine that for data to help you build common responses and questions and even build more content out of it. So your team can actually see, going a little bit more deeper, what percent of questions are we asking that everybody's following or that everybody seems to be facing as well. So you can really uncover a lot of different opportunities if you're adding the buckets to put the data into. And there's definitely more passive and active, and sometimes you want to show the exec team all of the data, and sometimes you want to just wrap it up into a nice bow and show them at the high level, here's the activities that we're doing internally that are helping our bottom line. And there are many of ways to do that. So like I don't believe people that say that there aren't, because there are definitely tangible ways that you can tie things to your bottom line, no matter what that bottom line may be. It just doesn't look like dollars always.
No, I love
I just
it.
followed you on Twitter. That was awesome, Nick. Wow. I
Yeah,
just followed you on Twitter. That was awesome.
You could tell right there. See, he dropped and I
Yeah.
bugged you up, Nick, and you had to hit it out of the park. I appreciate that.
Thank you, guys.
And I think when we're talking this data element, and you talked about like all these things that play in, you weren't talking about the actual data itself, because there's context that has to come in there. There's the community's input that actually influences the data, but the data helps tell the story. It doesn't tell the full story. And I know, Rachel, not only in the social CRM space, but really where CRM is finally changing the mold from being something that we force sales teams to actually utilize to kind of keep track of them, to now hopefully they're leveraging the data that's in there to empower them to do more. How do you kind of see that really how executive buy-in, not only in your role, but how listening comes in that same play?
I think, well, to answer the question directly, like what can a community manager do to get executive buy-in, it is about the data, and we're so fortunate that social tools are finally catching up and enabling us to analyze the data more easily instead of just having to feel really good about it. We can actually show numbers that do make a big difference. And social CRM is a tool, but there's a lot of simple ones just for monitoring engagement and Google Analytics. And you can tie ROI if that's important to your leadership. I know it isn't always the bottom line, but you gotta make money to stay in business. So whether it's you just acknowledge that it's going to take 6 months or 30 days, I think as long as you just set goals in place, everybody's happy.
No, I think that's important too, and not only the data element, but data that's specific. I think it goes back to what we were talking about when Nick said, influencers finding value for each department. It's also finding what data matters to each department. Big data is only a problem if you don't know what the hell to do with that data, and I think that also includes internally with how employees are using external social, but also how employees are using enterprise social networks, social business side. So, we have 7 minutes left or so. I'm used to hosting this with only one guest. I could get through like 10 questions, but I love that we have a panel because you guys love.
Hey. I really think we need to talk about the social CEO. I think we've missed a really key component here. We've covered a ton of bases, but what CEOs understand their influence on their team and their company, right? We kind of get that. What a lot of them don't understand is what their impact on social can really do for their own program and their company. So if you look at, I'm gonna hit up Jacob to know what this stat is, but
Oh God!
The companies, come on, don't let me down. Of the companies that are social, I think it's got to be like 80 or 90% of them actively have a CEO that's on social, like Benioff, like Leger, like Branson, and it's the fact that they are actually engaging. Number one. Number two, it's the fact that they're engaging with their own employees, right? So I post something on Twitter, maybe it's from content in our platform that I like, that someone submitted, or maybe it's just my thoughts on the industry in general. My CEO, Russ Radin, is right there actively engaging, right? He's retweeting me, he's responding and replying and conversing, and as well, my CMO as well. And it really gives you kind of like, as a regular employee, all across the board, no matter what level you're at, it really ties you back to that, what we started with here, community, right? Yep. So social CEOs are so huge in bringing that buy-in to the rest of the community, and I think that really also equals success to become a social business.
I think that's an interesting. That's probably the 25th hour that we'll tell Dom, Sherry, and Brew that we'll pick up on the 25th hour to talk social CEOs.
Oh yeah.
The official hook.
Yeah, I love that. So we're getting the Oscars wrap-up notes coming on the side here.
I was gonna start playing some music for you guys, but this panel has been. You guys have been absolutely fantastic. Hour 3, we're already just crushing it and knocking it out of the park. So thanks a lot, guys.
Coming up next is when is a community really just an audience? So you can catch the next hour. Go to cmed.co, click on schedule, and find the next broadcast. So thanks, guys. Happy CMAD. Don't forget to tweet your CMAD selfies out. See you guys soon.
See ya.
Awesome.